Have you ever wondered what the most underrated RPGs are? Forget Skyrim, forget Baldur's Gate 3, forget Dragon Age the Veilguard. Today we'll dive into the best of the best that no longer get the love they deserve. If you're new to Players Pads, then consider subscribing. So pretty much every game under the sun seems to be an RPG these days. Whether it's breathtaking experiences like Baldur's Gate 3, or gaspingly underwhelming titles like Dragon Age the Veilguard. If you slap the word RPG onto the box, your game will fly off the shelves. But here's the thing, I come from a time when to say you enjoyed RPGs kinda made you feel like the black sheep. A time when action-adventure or FPS games were the guaranteed moneymaker. I think this was a uniquely creative time for role-playing games, and I'm of course talking about the era of gaming that came between 2000 and 2012. This era of video games in general wasn't limited to microtransactions locking half the game away on launch, or game mechanics with no substance and depth. There was no influencer marketing to make the game seem like it's the best thing since sliced bread, only for the game to release and it be a husk of what it was built up to be.
Oh my god, what is on my screen? Oh dear me.
This was an era where video games sold well purely based on if the game was good or not. In respect to role-playing games, if you wanted to compete with the big players, you had to stand out. This meant meaningful RPG systems, narrative writing with real depth, and a true passion for great games. Many RPGs during this era absolutely thrived. Mass Effect, The Elder Scrolls, Final Fantasy, I could go on. And there was also a good deal of amazing RPG games that by all means should have thrived, but for some reason didn't. Today we'll delve into RPG games that I can't live without, but many do. Whether that's because these games didn't get the respect they deserved at the time, or did, but have faded into obscurity as the years pass by. And with all that set up out the way, let's get in to our first game. Firstly, we have Kameo Elements of Power. The game centers around a fairy called Kameo that has her family stolen by her evil sister Callus. More importantly though, her sister steals her elemental powers. Now Kameo can shapeshift into a slew of different creatures that have their own unique playstyle. Pummleweeds, Chiller, 40 Below, Rubble, and Deep Blue. As Kameo frees her captured elemental sprites, she regains these powers, adding a new playstyle to the game each time. Kameo's sister teams up with the Troll King Thorn, and that's basically what you're up against. A lot of Kameo's world and dungeons resemble that of what you'd see in the older Zelda games. Think Ocarina of Time, for example. I mean, honestly, the game's world and level design feels like a mashup between Zelda and Fable, and that is for sure to the game's benefit. Kameo was originally meant to release on the N64. Then it was delayed through to the GameCube era. Then it was delayed again, this time to the peak of the original Xbox, before it was inevitably delayed one more time, and finally released as a 360 launch title. After being in some sort of development hell, you'd think Kameo would have turned out pretty misshapen on arrival. I mean, the game does lack in a lot of areas, notably story depth and level completion rewards, but honestly, despite all of that, Kameo is quite a marvel for its time. For an Xbox 360 launch title to run smoothly with the amount of NPCs on screen as Kameo has is an accomplishment in of itself. Kameo borders more on the action-adventure side of the RPG genre, but I do think there's enough RPG elements in Kameo to scratch that RPG itch. Now, Kameo's story is the classic hero's journey. Kameo is chilling without a worry, then something big happens which thrusts her into the middle of a conflict. She faces trials and tribulations with a middle ground roadblock. She overcomes her problem, saves the day, and returns home. It's incredibly simple with not much in the ways of narrative nuance or depth, but it works. You can get attached to Kameo as a character, not because of any inherent exploration of her character, but because she's charming, funny, a little goofy, and has cool powers. And sometimes that's all you need when the gameplay loop and mechanics speak for themselves. And that's not to mention how cute the baby elementals are. I mean, look at this one, look at this little one.
It's so cute!
Probably delete that, that's a bit weird. And after playing as them for a while, you'll actually feel an attachment to their own personalities that shine through their unique playstyles. Kameo is just a short-lived, relaxed RPG that you can have a lot of fun with. I've in the past used Kameo as an easy stopgap between big game releases. If I finish up a big game and have a couple of weeks until the next big RPG comes out, I'll bash out a new playthrough of Kameo to pass the time without feeling like I'm playing a game for the sake of filler. Because filler is far from what Kameo is. Give it a go next time you're looking for something new and you'll see what I mean. Okay, I know what you're thinking. The Witcher 3 was huge. It's based off popular books and there's even a freaking Netflix show. How can The Witcher 2 be underrated? Well, yeah, these days The Witcher is a household name, but before the success of The Wild Hunt, Witcher 2 was insanely underrated. It was released right around the time of Skyrim, and I bet my entire life savings, which, isn't much, that I know exactly which game of the two you picked up. The Witcher 2 has also been completely overshadowed by its successor. And it's a shame because The Witcher 2 has just as much heart, soul, and charm as 3. The game is nowhere near as expansive and the combat system takes a lot of time to appreciate, but if you can go in with an open mind, without the preconceptions of Witcher 3 gameplay, well, what you'll find is a diamond in the rough. The story focuses on Geralt after he gets amnesia. Geralt has to pick up the pieces he's forgotten. He gets tangled up in the affairs of forest elves, assassins, and kings. See what I did there? The name, yeah. You also get to explore a much wider expanse of the Northern Realms in The Witcher 2, granted in a much linear open world. The open world feels a lot more akin to the BioWare or Baldur's Gate 3 style, open linear zones that you progress through one by one. But gameplay itself isn't too different from Witcher 3. You can feel the blueprint in this game that made 3 such a success, meaning most of the stuff you loved about The Witcher 3 is indeed present here too. Geralt is played by Doug Cockle, same as Witcher 3. You cast Witcher signs, same as Witcher 3. You level up and unlock new skills, same as Witcher 3. I'll admit, The Witcher 2 is much harder to get into than 3, as it has an inherently outdated feeling, but once you get past the old jank, you'll be hooked. Something else I love about The Witcher 2 is the relationship between Geralt and Triss. This game explores a lot more of their dynamic, which adds a great deal of context to the third game. I also prefer how The Witcher 2 handles the elves. A big chunk of the story revolves around the Sokia Tel, a faction that I feel was brushed under the rug somewhat in Witcher 3. The Witcher 2 is so much closer to 3 than people realise, and I think that's why it's played and talked about so much less. So yeah, Witcher 2, underrated. Now, much like the Witcher series, Fable is far from unpopular or underrated. The first game was a hit back in 2004 and made many of our childhoods. Hell, they're even rebooting the series. But the Fable series has somewhat of a middle child, a game that always gets overlooked. Fable 1 was goated and Fable 3 was ridiculed, and that resulted in Fable 2 being quietly sidelined. Fable 2 is pretty fairly and objectively worse in most ways than the first game, but I'd say it's still a great journey. Not to get confused with Fable The Journey, that random Xbox Connect game from 2012. Yeah, no, we don't talk about that one. Fable 2 doesn't go completely off the deep end by eliminating nearly everything that made Fable great like Fable 3 did, not by any means. Fable 2 has a silent protagonist that works their way from humble beginnings towards good or evil, or anywhere in between. Fable has a wide range of skills and abilities unique to the build you choose, mainly mage or fighter. Fable 2 has the perfect balance between its iconic British comedic vibe and a much darker tone. And the story reflects both vibes in tandem to create a world that feels hopeful even in the darkest hour, whether that be the hope of the hero's liberation or the villain's triumph. The choice is yours. Dominate Albion or free it. Now, Fable as a whole has never been what I deem to be a fully fledged deep RPG. To me, it toes the line between RPG and action-adventure. It's a sort of soft RPG, but that doesn't make it any less of an RPG game than any of the others on this list. Fable 2 will immerse you in a world of deep lore, mystery, and laughs. You can fart on an NPC of your choosing, kiss them, cuss them out, dance with them, kill them, marry them, whatever you want. Again, it's not Baldur's Gate levels of game depth, but it's still an RPG that I come back to time and time again. Honestly, much more than the more popular Fable games. And while we're on the topic of more easygoing RPG games, going back to Kameo, the game we talked about earlier, these two games share a very similar English comedic vibe. They both come from British developers that imbue their worlds with inherent English charm. I just said inherent again. I've been using that word so much in this script. I don't know why. Just go with it. Alright matey, do you like a cup of tea? I can cook you some fish and chips. I got no dentist, my teeth are falling off. Or you look like the Travis Scott fish, bruv. Yeah. British mean funny. We've all got bad teeth and eat toad in the hole. Yeah, get it out your system, guys. I know. It's okay. Zelda. The series in of itself is popular, iconic, famous, but this specific Zelda game is, in more ways than one, very much the black sheep of the franchise, Twilight Princess. Firstly, some say that the old Zelda games aren't even RPGs, and I'd beg to differ. Link has a sense of progression through increasing health and unlocking new playstyles by finding items, like the fishing rod, iron boots, or Zora armor. You can train your horse Epona. Oh, and also the world state changes based on your actions. I mean, that's enough progressive gameplay mechanics to call a game an RPG, I'd say. And Twilight Princess is really underappreciated. Twilight Princess's darkness is reflected in the story, ambient setting, its twisted characters, and music. Don't get me started on the absolute vibes that come with the soundtrack. I've been hoping for years that somebody would make a Twilight Princess type beat with the following as a sample. The story focuses on the Kingdom of Hyrule being under attack and occupied by the Twilight Realm. The Twilight Realm is kinda like the Upside Down from Stranger Things in a way. It exists as a parallel to the Kingdom of Hyrule. But the inhabitants, for reasons I won't spoil, attempt to invade the world of light. As a village boy unreluctantly thrust into heroism, Link must purify the realm of the Twilight Blight. I don't know why I said it like that. Twilight Blight, yeah. And I'm sure you guessed it. Save Princess Zelda. I won't lie to you guys, Twilight Princess isn't on the same level of creepiness as Majora's Mask. Majora's Mask had a sense of impending doom, as there was quite literally a doomsday timer, and Majora's Mask constantly reminded you that you were not safe. You had a finite amount of time to your adventure, and that physical, constant reminder kept a feeling of dread within you throughout the game. I do feel as if Twilight Princess could have tried something similar. Like as the game goes on, the Twilight Realm could be perpetually engulfing Hyrule in real time. If you don't do your due diligence to keep track of the Twilight Realm from taking over, you'd game over, or something. Regardless of all that though, Twilight Princess still possesses its own unique aura of eeriness, especially when playing as Wolf Link. Oh yeah, forgot to mention that, didn't I? In a cruel twist of fate, Link is cursed to distort into a form of a wolf when under the Twilight's influence. It adds another level of gameplay that differs enough to human Link gameplay that when you enter a new layer of Twilight and enter a similar gameplay loop, it feels like a nice change of pace. And speaking of the gameplay loop, it's fairly simple. Discover a new area infected by the Twilight, find spirits, clear the land of Twilight after fighting some creatures that honestly look like those creepy homunculuses in those old YouTube videos. Do you remember those? Yeah, they creeped me out as a kid. You fight a Twilight boss, and you talk to and help out NPCs in and out of the Twilight. You finally move onwards to the next area, and repeat. It's repetitive, but there is enough substance in narrative context to keep going. Also, as I mentioned about the character playstyle progression, you'll need certain items or armor to enter and clear certain areas in the game. This incentivizes you to explore and return to the areas you've previously liberated in order to see what hidden goodies you might have missed. Another nice touch to the game are the advanced combat moves that you can unlock as human or Wolf Link. Again, there's enough RPG mechanics here for me to say, yeah, Twilight Princess scratches that RPG itch, and it's an underrated Zelda gem. And finally, at number 1 on this list, not that it was in order or anything, is once more games from a very famous franchise. Actually, I think this might be the biggest, most iconic franchise in all of modern pop culture media. Yo, Players Pad, PP, in what world is Star Wars underrated? Again, I know, it's very clearly not. It might even be overrated at this point. But if you mention the name Kotor to any one gamer around you, can you tell me with confidence that every one of those gamers without a doubt would know the game you're talking about? When Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic came out back in 2003 and then KOTOR 2 in 2004, sure, they were popular and far from underrated. But I can unequivocally tell you that today, decades later, these games do not get played anymore. Not by many, at least. The graphics of these games are unashamedly early 2000s aesthetics. They really don't hold up at all to today's graphical standards. And the combat system being turn-based but also kind of in real time does not help the game's sake. Kotor 1 and 2 feel insanely outdated. But regardless of all of that, I urge you to play these. The story writing and narrative as a whole are an insane step up from the majority of games that come out today. The protagonist arcs tie in so well with the world around them, which makes it all the more compelling with each unique companion character that you can meet, recruit, and get to know, and even influence on your adventure. If you love games like Baldur's Gate 3, then the Kotor games are a must-play. They are literally the Star Wars versions of BG3. Okay, so you know the D20 mechanics Baldur's Gate 3 is built from, right? And you know that system is derived straight from the D20 rules of modern D&D, right? Yeah, well, the Kotor games work off a slight variation of the same D20 rules. So if you play BG3, then by default you'll be off to a great start in the Kotor games. You don't get to manually roll a dice here in Kotor though, that all happens behind the scenes. And combat is turn-based but also in real time. The Baldur's Gate nerd in me wishes I could pull the camera top down and go completely turn-based, but regardless, I personally feel right at home in Kotor like I do in BG3 all the same. So Kotor 1 revolves around a mysterious stranger as the protagonist. You're up against Darth Malak of the Sith. But it's up to you whether you become a Jedi, Sith, or anything in between. That's all I really want to say on that without giving too much away, because the story is just that good. Kotor 2 takes place in the years following Kotor 1. The Jedi have been all but slaughtered. You are the exile. The last remaining Jedi. Do you pledge yourself to a morally ambiguous Jedi code? Join the Sith in their own skewed version of peace amongst the stars? Or be like Miles Morales and do the thing he said where he was like, nah, I'ma do my own thing, or whatever it was. Kotor 2 plays and feels exactly the same as its predecessor, but it does flesh out your companions in much more depth, now adding the ability to influence their alignment and train them as a Jedi or Sith. Now, if you decide on playing Kotor 2, you absolutely must make sure to install the restored content mod through Steam. This adds much of the game that was meant to release with Kotor 2, but never did. Obsidian, the developers, had a rushed release, and the game pretty much came out half-baked. But yeah, the restored content mod literally brings back everything as it was intended. So if you don't play with this mod, then you're basically locking 80% of the game away from you. And we don't want that, do we? Personally, I prefer Kotor 2 over Kotor 1, mostly when it comes to story and the planets you explore. However, Kotor 1 will always be the most nostalgic game to me. It's the one I grew up with as a kid. But honestly, both games are just, they are chef's kiss. Especially if you love Star Wars, and especially if you're looking for one of the best RPGs of all time. And there you have it. 5 underrated RPG video games to play. I can easily come up with about 1 million ideas for underrated video games, so maybe I'll make this a series. If you want to see that, of course, make sure to press the like button and subscribe with notifications on so you don't miss new content from me. I love you guys, see you later.